She opened my door without warning, slipped off her dress and said, "Move over." The night sky above Colony 7 burned with 3 moons when Lieutenant Jake Morrison first saw her standing in the observation deck. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver under the artificial lights, and her eyes held colors that didn't exist in any human spectrum. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with features that were almost human but not quite enough to be comfortable. Her name was Zara, and she was a delegate from the Valthian Empire, the most powerful civilization in the known galaxy. They had come to Earth with promises of technology, trade agreements, and protection from the hostile species that lurked in the dark spaces between stars. Humanity had barely mastered faster than light travel when the Valthian found them. And now humanity stood at a crossroads. Jake had been assigned as her personal security escort. A job that sounded simple until he realized how little humans understood about alien psychology. The Valthian communicated through multiple channels simultaneously. Their words carried undertones that human ears couldn't detect, and their body language followed rules that made no sense to human observers. The research station orbited a dead planet that the Valthian wanted to study. They claimed it held archaeological significance, but Jake suspected there was more to the story. The Valthian never did anything without multiple layers of purpose, and their interest in this barren rock seemed too intense for simple academic curiosity. Ara spent her days in the research labs analyzing samples and recording data. She rarely spoke to Jake or any of the other humans except when absolutely necessary, but he caught her watching him, sometimes with an expression he couldn't read. Her presence made the other scientists nervous, and they whispered about her when they thought she couldn't heart. 3 weeks into the mission, Jake noticed changes in Zara's behavior. She became restless, pacing the corridors at odd hours and skipping meals. The station's medical officer ran scans but found nothing wrong by human standards. Of course, human standards meant nothing when dealing with alien biology. One night, Jake was reviewing security footage in his quarters when his door suddenly opened without warning. Zara stood in the doorway wearing a dress made of fabric that seemed to flow like water. Her silver skin gleamed in the dim light, and her multicolored eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his breath catch. She stepped inside and the door closed behind her without touching any controls. The Valthian had telekinetic abilities among many others, and Zara was reportedly one of their strongest operatives, though she was officially listed as a scientist. Jake started to stand to ask what she needed, but she raised one hand, and he found himself unable to move. Not paralyzed exactly, but compelled to remain still. She moved closer, and with a fluid motion that seemed to defy physics, her dress slipped off her shoulders and fell to the floor. "Move over," she said in perfect English, though her lips barely moved. Jake's mind raced, trying to understand what was happening. This violated every protocol, every rule about human-alien interaction. The training modules he had completed before this assignment flashed through his mind. All the warnings about maintaining professional distance, about the dangers of cultural misunderstanding. Yet something in her voice carried a note of desperation, not desire, and his instincts told him this was not what it appeared to be. He managed to speak through whatever force held him. "What's going on?" His voice came out steadier than he felt. She sat on the edge of his bed, her silver skin now showing patterns of bioluminescence that pulsed in rhythm with her breathing. The patterns were erratic. He noticed not the smooth waves he had observed during their previous interactions. Something was definitely wrong. "I need your help," she said, and for the first time since they met, her voice carried genuine emotion, raw and unfiltered. "I have been poisoned by someone aboard this station." The words hit him like a physical blow. "Poisoned? How? When? Be my own people?" She looked away, and the lights in her skin flickered irregularly. "There are factions within the Valthian government who do not want this alliance with humanity to succeed. They fear your species' potential, your capacity for rapid advancement." Jake felt the invisible force holding him release, and he sat up slowly. "Why come to me?" "Because you are the only one I can trust." She turned back to him, and he saw something in her eyes that transcended species fear, mixed with determination. "The poison is designed to kill, slowly, to make it look like natural causes, but it also has another effect. It breaks down the barriers we Valthian maintain around our telepathic abilities." Understanding began to dawn on him. "You're broadcasting everything." She confirmed my thoughts, my emotions, my mission briefings. Anyone with telepathic sensitivity within 100 light years can read me like an open book. And there are Valthine ships within that range. So when you came here, when you address physical contact with another sentient being creates interference, she said simply. It disrupts the telepathic signal enough to give me some privacy. Your species is naturally resistant to telepathic intrusion, which makes you ideal. The closer the contact, the stronger the interference. Jake processed this information quickly. His training in first contact protocols had covered scenarios like this, though never quite so intimate. Do you know who poisoned you? She nodded. There is a Valthine named Korath among the research delegation. He believes humanity should be conquered or destroyed, not welcomed as equals. He sees your creativity, your unpredictability as a threat. What's the cure time? She said with a bitter smile. The poison will metabolize in approximately 72 hours. But until then, I need to remain in close proximity to a human to shield my thoughts. If Korath discovers that I know about his involvement, he will kill me, and probably start a war in the process. Jake stood and moved to his equipment locker, pulling out a spare jacket. Here, he said. Put this on, we need to tell Commander Phillips, NOVARA said firmly. You cannot trust your chain of command. Korath has spent months building relationships with your leadership, planting suggestions in their minds. They won't believe you, and if they try to confine me, he will have the perfect excuse to extract methane. What do we do? Wait. She pulled on the jacket, which was comically large on her frame. Despite her height, and we gather evidence, Korath is not acting alone. There are others on this station working with him. If we can identify them and document their conspiracy, we can expose the whole network. Jake sat down heavily. This was way above his pay grade, but he could see the logic in her plan, and something in him trusted her despite the absurdity of the situation. All right, he said, but we do this smart. No heroics. A ghost of a smile crossed her alien features. I was told humans were reckless. Some of us, she said, were also stubborn when someone threatens. Our potential allies. The next 3 days were tense. Jake and Zara maintained a careful balance, staying close enough for the telepathic interference to work, but not so close that it raised suspicions among the crew. They worked together, reviewing security footage, analyzing communication logs, and tracking the movements of suspected conspirators. Jake found himself adapting to her presence in ways that surprised him. The Valthine operated on different sleep cycles than humans, so Zara would often work through what humans considered night. Jake adjusted his own schedule to match hers, bringing coffee for himself and the sweet mineral water she preferred from the station's specialized dispensary. During their investigation, they discovered that the conspiracy ran deeper than either of them had initially suspected. Korath had been planning this for months, carefully selecting his team and positioning them throughout the station's critical systems. The reactor sabotage was just the final step in a plan that involved manipulating research data to make humanity appear incompetent and dangerous. Zara taught Jake to recognize the subtle signs of Valthine deception, the way their bioluminescent patterns changed when they lied, shifting from smooth waves to jagged pulses, the specific frequency of subvocal communication they used for secret messages, which registered on audio equipment as a faint hum that humans had dismissed as background noise. Humanity had been interacting with the Valthine for months without understanding any of these tells, and it had nearly cost them everything. In quieter moments between their investigative work, they talked about their respective worlds. Jake learned that Zara had been raised in one of the Valthine's floating cities where children were taught from birth to control their telepathic abilities. She described vast libraries of shared memories where one could experience the lives of ancestors stretching back thousands of years, and Jake told her about Earth, about oceans and forests, concepts that fascinated her since the Valthine homeworld was mostly desert and crystal formations. He showed her pictures of his family's farm in the Midwest and tried to explain the smell of rain on soil, something she had never experienced. They identified 3 other Valthine conspirators embedded in the delegation and discovered that Korath planned to sabotage the research station's main reactor. The explosion would kill everyone aboard and be blamed on human incompetence, giving the war faction the excuse they needed to abandon the alliance. On the final night, as Zara's body slowly neutralized the poison, they prepared their evidence. Jake had never worked so closely with Anyone before human or otherwise, he found himself admiring Zara's intelligence, her courage, and her absolute commitment to preventing war between their species.